You're listening to the audio portion of Workshop Wednesdays. Workshop Wednesdays is a free live discussion about topics affecting accountants, bookkeepers, and business owners. You can join the ABO group in Facebook to participate live Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Just search for ABBO in Facebook. This podcast is brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, where you will learn, grow, and build a thriving bookkeeping practice. We have hundreds of lessons with almost every aspect of the industry. Start your free month today at Schoolofbookkeeping.com. Welcome to another workshop webinar brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com. You're in your uniform?
Yes, sir.
You are. Good. Look at that. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about it's a painful process. And so what we're going to be talking about is Stripe and PayPal. It's like the redheaded stepchildren of banks when it comes to handling them as an accountant. Why is it you're living this nightmare right now? So what is the deal with Stripe and PayPal?
So I'll back up and tell you that we're huge advocates of QuickBooks Payments Merchant Service because it's integrated and it's real easy to see what the fees are. And when you get used to that land, it's a happy, happy world. But it doesn't work everywhere. So even at CBG and School of Bookkeeping, we have the drama of PayPal at CBG, and we have the drama of Stripe at School of Bookkeeping. So the problem with these ideas, and includes Square, and you can go yada, 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 and your bank and so on, they send over your deposit in Stripe after taking out their fees. Now, is that by accident? No, they don't want you to know how much you're paying for it. So if you have a customer that is using Stripe and they could actually use Intuit or QuickBooks Payments instead, then switch them because it takes so much time to reconcile. PayPal has got one more monster to it. PayPal is also something you can use to pay people. So when I get something I'm supposed to pay for at CBG and they're like, oh, use PayPal, I'm all excited, but boom, that came out of the money that's sitting in there waiting for me to manually transfer in. So now I've made all these sales with all these fees thrown in, and then I paid for something. So then I'm like, wait, let's transfer that amount in. Well, what is that amount? That's the problem.
And it doesn't get any easier because when you start to Google, okay, well, how do I connect my Stripe with QuickBooks? My Lord, you're inundated with someone or something wanting to help you with this process, right? Because and let's just kind of take a step back and talk about what Stripe and PayPal actually are.
Right.
So they're payment processors, right? They process payments in a variety of ways, and Stripe is probably, would you say, Carrie, that they're probably the most common payment processor for websites, selling things online. They're from.
Now, does Shopify use Stripe, or does Shopify have its own?
Shopify has its own.
Okay, so there's
processor.
Many.
And maybe it's Stripe underneath. I don't know. I mean, there was a time at QuickBooks where they had a partnership with Stripe, and when you set up a QuickBooks Merchant Service, you actually were getting a Stripe account, and that didn't go well.
Now, don't get confused.
They don't do that.
And we need to add, and I know many people are familiar with Venmo. Mm-hmm. So it's the same idea. Money goes in, money goes out. If you take your mind and treat it as a payment method or another bank account, because I think the important thing is, before we get to how to figure it out, you're saying, what is it? But why would you even use it? You need to understand the mechanics of the transaction so that you can figure out where the.
Yeah. And we kind of we were forced into using Stripe
Yeah.
Because we as we've mentioned before, we transitioned to another platform. Their only form of processing is through a partnership with Stripe. So we had to, use the Stripe account, right? We would have loved to use, a QuickBooks Payments because
It's way better and cheaper.
To your point, right? It's allowing the bookkeeping and the billing to be done at the same time, right? And Francisco mentioned in the chat, yes, the fees are outrageous. When you look at that, and
They don't
some
want you to
people
look at it. They
they
don't
want you to see it, right? But ultimately what happens is a payment is processed, whether through Stripe or PayPal.
PayPal or Venmo or Shopify or
Doesn't matter.
bank.
And then, in a perfect world, you have multiple payments happening in a day, right?
Oh, batching.
Right.
Intuit does a pretty batch job, not this.
And then there's going to be a funding delay, right? PayPal is a little bit of a different animal in that they have a PayPal balance, right? And then that you can utilize to send money elsewhere. Like you can, you can pay for things out of your PayPal balance, or say, hey, I want that to go into my actual bank account, please. And then there's going to be some time delay between the time that happens and the time that you take out the funds or withdraw the funds. But before it gets from the sale to the funds, in PayPal or even in Stripe, they don't do this out of the kindness of their heart.
No, they take a fee out.
They take some fees out, right?
Not just one, but like multiple. Two.
Yeah, like Stripe, because credit card fraud is pretty rampant. They charge a fraud fee, which some might say that's the fraud. But they charge a fee to make sure that the card is not fraudulent, right? So there's a small, pennies, type of thing. But of course, that adds up. But you have the reassurance that you won't have chargebacks, because guess what? If you have a chargeback, that's more fees, right? So all of these things are centered around, fees. Did I say fraud or frog? Yeah, there's a frog fee. No. So the reconciliation of what I sold to what actually came into the bank account is what drives accountants and bookkeepers bonkers.
And the customer doesn't understand because they don't know what they don't know. Unless you're watching as a customer and you're the one who is in charge of this, it's not easy. We've done this for so many years. We don't talk about how many, it's a lot, that we've figured out workarounds, and it's still not easy. So make sure you're charging, or if you're working for somebody, that they know how much time it's taking. It's awful.
And the challenge is that, okay, in an example, right? I sell something for $100, and what ultimately comes into my bank account is the $100 minus the fees, right? That's a simple example, right? So what actually comes into the bank account, or coming in through the bank feeds, is $97.50, right? Where are you doing the accounting, right? I mean, are you counting the sale, or are you just doing things from the bank account's perspective? If you're just doing it from the bank account's perspective, all you see is a deposit for $97.50. What do you do with that, right? Like that's part of the practices of working with a client, that sometimes you need to peel back the layers of the onion and see what they're doing, and understanding, there's more than what we're dealing with. I had a coffee client. He had Square, he had Shopify, he had PayPal, he had he had other things, right? And all he was doing was bringing them in from the bank feed and saying
So,
Shopify sales, you know, so there was no breakdown, right? As far as what was actually sold, he was just categorizing them as income from the bank feed based on the net deposit. And then he also was selling to Whole Foods, right? So Whole Foods, he would charge them credit cards, and those would actually be in his QuickBooks as sales. And then he wants to then reconcile the deposit from Square or whatever his credit card processor was with those lump sum deposits. So then it was a nightmare, to try to peel that layer back, because when he came to me, he's like, I've got $442,000 extra on my income statement that's not in my bank account. Right?
yeah, and that's part of the feed problems. If you're expecting 100 and your feed comes in at 97.50, you may actually enter that sale in twice.
Right. And this is a common workflow breakdown. I saw on Facebook the other day where somebody was ranting about undeposited funds, and we have a nice workshop about undeposited funds and how it can be tricky, but often that's where you where the sale and the deposit meet, and you can actually then make that net deposit reconcile to the bank account. Oh, you're getting all choked up.
Yeah. So, there's several ways to slice this, and one of them can be just be extremely sloppy, and whatever Shopify says, that's your sales, and call it a day. How do you know if you got paid for all of your sales? Are you sending out, that's the downfall of that is there can be fraud. You could be shipping off inventory that someone actually didn't pay for. The card could be returned. There's a number of things that just taking cash basis accounting and running with it, you could be ripped off and have no idea.
Yeah, because if you're only recognizing things based on the bank account, that's taking a lot of faith and trust that the credit card processor is processed the card and is depositing the funds, and having no idea what those fees actually broke down to. So
and I would imagine too, if you get audited and you're doing that with PayPal and you got expenses going through, how are you going to substantiate? Let's say I paid casual labor. You've got a lot of moving pieces that you're not accounting for. So we don't recommend doing it that way. We recommend the time-consuming hard way, so you can manage your books.
And then next week we'll have Bookkeep joining us because they have a solution to help bookkeepers, manage and reconcile these sales to deposits, so that you're not necessarily needing to, itemize and make sure that all of those sales did come over. But the important thing to distinguish with Stripe and PayPal is that they are just payment processors, right? So, and that's really what we're kind of focused on with regards to handling that inside of QuickBooks, is that, the reconciling the difference between what was actually processed and what was actually deposited,
Right.
which, in its simplest forms, you can just find out what the fees are and make that discrepancy adjustment. What has been your best practice with regards to, let's just take PayPal, because that's the hell you're living.
I'm living it as we speak. So my best practice is to enter the sale in as you expect it, and then to create a bank account in my chart of accounts called PayPal. And then I pull those statements by month and I match it up like I'm treating a bank account. And then when I decide, because PayPal just sits there until you move the money, then that money is just simply a transfer. Year end, I like to be real clean with it and have it be a zero balance, but that doesn't always happen. It's going to land on the balance sheet. But by doing that, and I was reconciling the past year, I noticed that, guess what? The fees went up. I mean, I don't remember a notice about that. What would I have done? I can't really say, oh, because I use that as a payment method. So, just the data, the information is super important, because this means that if these prices keep creeping up, then we need to reevaluate what we're charging for. I can make it up in my sales. So, increase my billable rate or something like that, or add more margin on a product is, one way to recoup that. There's also some people who like to do you're going to pay me outside of a check, then I'm going to charge you to process it. But my opinion is, if I don't have to go to the bank, that saves me time too. So it's just, the data is super important. Peel it back, go back to the details, go old school. One step from paper and pen is, at least having it in the software and reconciling it like a checkbook. Check it off and reconcile to the beginning and ending balance. And then your books are good. And then like
And
you're
then,
talking about
and
a
then as far
tool.
as what actually comes into the bank account, you're just taking the funds out of that other bank account, whether it's
Yep.
Stripe or PayPal, and putting that as a transfer, or however you want to,
Transfer.
categorize that type of transaction,
Mhm.
from one to the other. Right.
Yes.
The other caveat with PayPal is that when you pay for things, from your PayPal and you linked your bank account, there's this immediate suckage of funds that comes out of your bank account, to pay that. So if you're not using your PayPal balance to pay these things, and you've tied it to the business bank account, then as soon as you pay for something with PayPal, then it immediately pulls those funds and withdraws those funds from your bank account. And all of this looks super clear on the statement, right?
No, because it goes in, it goes out. So basically it's coming out of PayPal. So there's your $300 you paid someone, or say it's, more, and you have to 1099 them. And then it comes out of your bank. So thankfully I have located in PayPal the statements, and I print those out, and it's good enough for what I'm trying to do. It's still painful. And then I'm actually reconciling it just like everything else. I reconcile it to the penny, save all my reports, and I'm good to go. Kimberly asked a question, Dan, side note, we did our own Stripe together over a Zoom call. We made faces. Had a headache. It was on a Friday. Our spouses are like, can you finish up? So we were doing it ourselves. So Dan, we were in there. Is there a statement like there is? Like, we did it so we could turn it in and get the taxes done, but
Yeah, there's not necessarily a statement per se where you get a PDF or a bank statement. You can create reports out of Stripe. You can see the breakdown of all of the payments versus all of the fees. The goal and one of the things that we're trying to work on, as far as in School of Bookkeeping, creating a best practices course with regards to Stripe or PayPal, is working directly in those payment processors, getting the output, so that now that you've moved the Stripe or the PayPal as its own separate bank account, how do you reconcile that everything that came in is posted, right? So and that's part of the challenge, is that you kind of need to do a mini reconciliation of the account itself. In Stripe's case, it will be a reconciliation back to zero, because
yes.
all of your payments coming in minus all of your fees that went out, minus all of the transfers or deposits into the bank account, or the payouts, as Stripe would call them, that would periodically, that's the cycle of getting it back to zero. But of course that never happens, right? Because you've got
year end, you have a sale that pops in. A lot of people say year end sale. Oh, School of Bookkeeping did that too. So we have all these payments that were lingering. So on our balance sheet, we have, due from Stripe or an outstanding deposit. But we had to take that thing all the way to zero and take it down to pay. I mean, we didn't print it out. We just tag teamed it, but it's painful, but different from PayPal because that money does land in our bank account automatically. So there's all those transactions you have to make sure are flowing.
Yeah, with Stripe, it's a little bit more cut and dry, and it should reconcile to zero because you've got, there's nothing in between the funds coming in. In theory, there's nothing in between the funds coming in and the funds being deposited, except for the fees and potentially a refund or something like that, chargeback, those types of things that would be other funds coming out before they actually make a deposit. But if you don't have access to the account, the client doesn't actually, grant you access to their Stripe account as an accountant. You're at the mercy of what comes in. So what we'll be talking about with Bookkeep next week is, how Bookkeep can actually serve as that platform that makes sure that all the transactions that came in, minus all the fees, post to QuickBooks appropriately. But it only works with QuickBooks Online. So if you want to use that with desktop, sorry, you're out of luck.
Oh well. So we've got a comment, or you see that under Q&A?
She did a demo with with Q&A. I'm sorry. She said she did a demo with Bookkeep, and it was pretty neat. So we'll have them on to talk about. Let's see here. Let me just read this. We run into many of those problems. What I decided to do with PayPal fees is transfer the total amount to the customer owes, which is easy for my bookkeeper to post to AR. I then review the PayPal account each month and transfer money into the account to cover the fees. Usually an estimate of about $100. We classify the money sent into the account as PayPal fees. It is close enough for me to do the internal bookkeeping. I adjust as necessary. Stripe is unfortunately not so user friendly. That is actually a pretty good best practice, but unfortunately, if you have a spike in your sales and your fees, then we could potentially be running into some of those things. What were you gonna?
The but about PayPal, different from Stripe, is that PayPal can be used as a payment method for you to buy goods or pay a vendor and so on. So that sounds real good until the accounts payable people are running around using it, or an owner accidentally paying for a fishing trip and they PayPal, and it grabs the wrong account. So reconciling it to the statement, because PayPal does offer that, is what I recommend, because I found a whole bunch of things that I had no idea were affecting it. I was like, it's just getting paid.
and part of some of the challenges of using an app to connect. So Intuit has created two apps. I'm sorry, one for PayPal. So the Connect to PayPal is an app that Intuit created to help get the PayPal transactions into QuickBooks. Unfortunately, the challenge that app does is it wants to record the sale, right? So if you are already recording the sale inside of QuickBooks, and then here comes the Connect with PayPal app to want to do that as well. Now you've robbed Peter to pay Paul, right? You've taken, you're able to reconcile your fees a lot better, but now you've double stated your income because you've got your sale already in it, and then PayPal comes in and wants to put another sale on the books, which doesn't have any detail, right, about what it is that you sold. So that's the challenge, right? So what I suggest typically to do is especially with PayPal, is don't connect it as the app, connect it just as a bank, right? So the feed comes in as individual transactions, and it doesn't have any indication as to what was sold, right? If you're doing that, right? If you're recording your sales in PayPal, that were paid by PayPal individually, let that be your source of truth with regards to the revenue side of things, and then just let PayPal again match to that transaction, as opposed to trying to indicate what it is that was actually sold. Do you agree?
Confusing.
I've got this glazed over look.
So when you're working on these accounts, setting them up, do them monthly, have a lot of coffee, and just try to go back to, old school on paper. What would this look like on paper? Because it's challenging. But once you get a system flowing, or you get a tool or an app or something, it can help, but it's still not perfect. So my recommendation is, when you can use Intuit Payments, do it, because you don't have this trauma with as long as that's set up right. It's a whole lot.
So what's the advantage of that? I mean, you kind of mentioned that. What has been your experience with using QuickBooks Payments over these other payment processors?
So, well, as pro advisors too, we get an extra discount than, Intuit's a great marketing tool, and you're in the software and they're trying to sell it to you. We can actually get it discounted from that. That's just a side note. But what I like is when you're running, you're having people pay for invoices, and you go to do this is within the desktop, say you hit bank, make deposit, it groups them all together. So you don't have to, with a bank, you might receive these payments, and then you have to select, it was these three and not these two. So the batching is non-existent problem when you move over to that. It lets you send invoices so people can pay from anywhere, which is nice, and they can decide how they're going to pay. And to me, get it paid. Don't overthink whether it's ACH or credit card. Just get it paid. And then the third thing is, a lot of people forget we have Go Payment, and if you don't sign up for Go Payment all by itself, you get it when you get payments. So you can be out in the field and receive a payment, and some of the softwares are now allowing you to connect it to an invoice. Point of sale ties it all the way back to inventory. So a lot of unknown tools, because even though Intuit's a great marketing machine, they forget some of these good things we have, and even our pro advisors don't know. So
it does a lot that a traditional payment processor does do. What doesn't it do?
What doesn't it do?
Yeah.
Well, it does websites, but not all. It doesn't do Shopify, and everyone's coming at us with Shopify.
Well, it does. You can link your payment, your QuickBooks payment, but at a premium, right? Because that's you have to pay a Shopify tax when you're using their non-preferred payment processor method. So it's a hard sell to do that, but then
if you're not having to think about it, if it's costing your customer or you an extra hour of $75 a month, I mean, I don't know what premium is, you might want to do that to make it more automated in your system, because it's just too easy to mess up doing it manually.
Yeah. So there's tons of different apps that are out there that will allow you to connect these accounts to your QuickBooks. But again, if the only thing is combining, reconciling the payments to what's actually been deposited, keep that separate from recording the sales, because a lot of these apps will just say, hey, we'll connect your app to it, but then it will be trying to
double your income.
Yeah, well, yeah, the potential is it could duplicate the revenue producing activities that your workflow, business workflows are already taken care of. So there's certainly a place for Stripe. Sometimes it is a necessary evil.
Like
as we've
as
we've already determined and discussed. And they integrate a lot with a lot of things that QuickBooks Payments or other payment processors won't. So And oftentimes it's kind of like a gateway to the gateway, right? Right. I mean, people start with PayPal, right? I mean, they use it personally, right? It's an easy way to transfer funds to someone, and then they start using it for business purposes, and then they try to, there's that honeymoon period, right, where you're like you're paying, you're using PayPal but paying for products and services for someone, and then I avoid the fees by by doing that. Well, that's
between you and Uncle Sam. We are not giving tax advice.
No.
But that's people will intermingle and commingle their personal and their business when they first get started. So it causes even more of a web of cleanup.
Right. Well, I mean, but you consider that's where things, maybe started for that person with using PayPal. So then, like, I can just put this up on my website, right? It's super simple, right? It's like Amazon. Amazon's made it super simple for people to buy things online. But if you're actually trying to sell stuff on Amazon, it's
it's expensive. It's expensive. So
and we won't even talk about the bi-weekly marketplace dump of
and then did you know, I saw this on something, did you know the Amazon Prime amount's going up? Yeah, now, their profits have gone up, but now that's gone up. I'm like, well, that's nice, because we're all addicted. It's Christmas comes every day over here at my house. So I don't know. You're in an RV. I don't know how that works.
They've convinced the world that it's okay to pay for free shipping. Wait a minute. You're paying for free shipping.
And I've fallen for it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then your kids want to get in your account because you have Prime.
Yeah.
And who ends up paying for those things they order on your account?
All right. Well, we're digressing.
I've gone sideways. I need to.
Maybe that will be another Workshop Wednesday topic of selling on Amazon. But next week we'll be joined by Bookkeep, and they'll be talking a little bit about how they have a solution to sort as a platform for bookkeepers using Stripe and PayPal, and look forward to having them on, as well as you all joining us next week on another Workshop Wednesday. So have a great week.
Yes, have a great week.